side likes to call the GOP the party of no. So you're looking at education, you're looking at the Common Core, and you're not only saying no. What are you saying beyond no? If you'll just go down the table and tell me what is on the other side of Common Core, how do we get to the standards that bring us to national standards that are transferable, given such a transient population in Georgia? And if we can start out with Ashley, just tell us what your alternative is to Common Core in simple words.
Well, I think we can do better than Common Core. I think that I agree with you that Common Core, where it is in the Senate right now and in the legislature, they're looking at it, they're trying their best to tweak it. Let me stand up and say this. First off, I've been a county commissioner, so I know anytime you get anything from the federal government, it comes with strings, and sometimes it comes with chains. And right now, we're trying to get let loose from Common Core, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But we got ourselves in this situation. But from my perspective, anytime there's a federal grant that's coming in education, I'm looking for the strings and I'm looking for the chains. And if I see either one of them, as a constitutional conservative, I'm going to speak up and stand up and say this is not something I think is in the best interest of our children.
Thank you. Well, as you alluded to earlier, there's so much, when you were talking about Common Core, there is a lot of, because I'm short, there is a lot of similarity between Georgia Performance Standards and Common Core. So, we could revert back to that. We have our, we have all this Common Core aligned material already in many districts. I don't, foresee wholesale asking people to switch out textbooks just to rid themselves of that. But let's talk about why did we want something centralized? Why would we want something standard? So first of all, as a Republican, as a conservative, centralization of any idea is not, I think, in keeping with our philosophy. So I don't like it from that standpoint. So I definitely think Georgians need a transparent, citizen-driven development of curriculum. So, and what we have in GPS, Georgia Performance Standards, isn't necessarily that either. So just by jettisoning the Common Core doesn't mean that takes us exactly to where we want to be, because I find our social security, boy, that's a Freudian slip, our social studies curriculum in K-5, it is actually, we adopted that, that's not Common Core, we adopted that in 2002. It would make Che Guevara happy, and it is creating more democratic voters and more dependent philosophies. We talked about, studying classical education. We talked about cultural issues and toxicity of culture. Well, we're putting a down payment on it by Georgia Performance Standards, what our red state, our conservative state passed in 2002. We don't teach the Bill of Rights in K through 5. If you go to the Georgia Performance Standards on the website, on the DOE website, and you search for the words Bill of Rights, you won't find them until 4th grade. You'll find one reference to them. But in 3rd grade, you learn about 9 important people, and those 9 important people include not one Republican, not one conservative, but they do include LBJ for the expanding the rights of poor people. They do include FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt. They do include Che Guevara. Excuse me, not Che Guevara, Cesar Chavez. I said Che Guevara would be happy with this, excuse me. But Cesar Chavez for expanding laborers' rights. So we're already putting this social movement theory in their heads in 3rd grade about rights before and expanding rights before we've even taught them about the fundamental principles of our nation. And that is a problem with, that is actually a central problem with our performance standards. That happened in 2002 when nobody was paying attention. So it has to be transparent. It's got to be, if Common Core is great, well, why can't we go to the Massachusetts math standards? They're better, okay? So we need to understand what are best practices. And I'll say one thing, with 17 states, either 9 of which have already pulled out, the rest on the verge, including Georgia, pulling out of the assessment for Common Core, you're not going to be able to compare using that very expensive assessment that was developed, or is being developed. So I think that's, and we don't have, I do tacitly disagree that we have as transient a population and the need for this. Those numbers are a little bit lower than people think. I think it's around 2%. So I think, I don't want to get all been out of shape about a small percentage either. I do believe in strong standards, but it has to be generated locally, it has to be controlled locally, and it has to be flexibility, like Mr. Wade talked about, has to be able to happen for each district too as well, so micro and the state.
Thank you.
I mean, this doesn't change for me. We need rigorous standards set by folks right here in Georgia. Amen. Right here in Georgia. We don't need federal inclusion. We don't need Washington telling us what we need to do. Now, very bright people, right here in the state of Georgia. Now, we've spent, and we know this, we spent a lot of money on Common Core. So, to take and just dump it out, that's probably not gonna happen. We know that. So let's take what's good from Common Core and let's use that, but let's make sure that it's all Georgia standards that we are abiding by. Now, I grew up, not only was in the military, I grew up in a military family. So I understand, I don't know the percentages, but I understand moving from one state to another state to another state. And not that you're gonna be on the same page in math when I get from one state to the next, but we wanna be in the ballpark. We just wanna make sure that we're in the ballpark. We wanna make sure that we do have a way to get the standard and make sure that we are, how can we judge how we are doing against the rest of the nation and the rest of the world? There just needs to be some mechanism in place so that we can measure that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm with the majority of folks, and I tell you, it's rigorous standards set by our folks here in Georgia without Washington telling us what we need to do.
Well, I think the first step, we look at Common Core, we have to make sure we control Common Core. Okay? In other words, we have to make sure we control our standards. Right now, if you look at Common Core standards, they're copyrighted. Georgia does not own the copyright to the Common Core standards. So whatever we have, if we're going to make the changes we need, to address the changes and have the flexibility to address our needs of our kids, we have to make sure that we own the horse. Because right now, when we're involved with the federal government, we are basically being led around. So that's the first and foremost thing that we have to do in Georgia. We have to have that dedication. We have to make that assertion that we are going to make sure that the standards are ours. Secondly, as we look at the standards, what you have to look at, the standards will always be a baseline. But we're looking at, for you at the local level, when you look at standards, you're looking at where your kids are. You have to have the flexibility to address the kids and take them where they're at. I mean, it would be great if we're making, manufactured parts and everybody came in there saying that they're not. So when we look at standards, just because they may be a grade, you may have somebody that's from, first grade still operating in kindergarten. Well, we have to have that flexibility not to put them in, those set of standards where they're not ready. That's what we did with No Child Left Behind. And there are a lot of mistakes that we did, and again, like I said, coming out of No Child Left Behind, somebody that had to implement it, I see a lot of the same similarities. So, I think we need to slow down, take a look at it, but first thing first, let's gain control of the standards themselves. Thank you.